I wasn't really expecting to be back here so soon. I lost my mom 3 years ago, about almost to this date, and I remember speaking at her memorial at this very spot. At the time, nothing prepared me for that moment, and even though I have my mom's experience now, nothing prepared me for this either. It's been the most surreal and difficult time that I could have experienced in my life. But as Father Justin has taught me, death is always unexpected, and I'm devastated that my dad's life was cut so shorter than it should have. While we're all grieving for him, I'm just grateful that I'm surrounded by all those who loved him and my dad very much. So thank you for being here today, everybody, to honor my dad's spirit with the Jim Buffett theme. It's his memory. Specifically, I want to say thanks, Marty, for coming. My dad's younger sister, thanks for being here today. Cousin Janet, maybe you guys had a very special relationship, and Cousin Rick. And thank you for your readings earlier. Very special thank you to my wife Karen, who also read first, and her parents. Patricia for being here with me today, and I know her brother and sister are watching virtually too. So. Thanks for being here. Also, of course, in spirit, my mom. Thank you. I know she's here watching this, probably alongside my dad. It's really nice that they are finally reunited, like they should be, because, like you said, it's such a special love that they shared, that I had a great example of love from them. And of course, also in spirit, my dad's parents, Robert and Dorothy Hare, both my grandmother, she passed away a couple years ago in 2022, and my grandfather in 2003. So thank you for all that. I personally have always had a very conflicted relationship with Panama City Beach. For what it's worth, my parents were never shy in telling me that I was conceived here. So, I suppose it was nice to know, but I didn't really want to think about that much. And I don't remember seeing the golf at that stage of life, so I didn't get to appreciate it. Later on in college, I was ordered here by the Air Force to Tyndall for my basic training, so that wasn't the most fun experience either. I pretty much just saw the airport in the face. But I am thankful that my parents' memories and up here are vastly different, and they loved it as soon as they stepped foot on it. Back way before I was born, when they spent their time here, and then later on when they purchased the house. So I'm just glad they had a beautiful connection and a happy retirement, and get to spend the time here later in life. My dad would always say the warm, salty air helps his arthritis, which bothers him a lot. So I understand why he wanted to leave New York, but he still brought a little. So he brought to this place a little southern faction of the Bills Mafia. If you didn't know, he's from Lockport, it's near Buffalo, Niagara Falls area. So living here for several years, they immediately built a amazing network of friends and neighbors. They found a community at this disparate church, St. Thomas by the Sea. My mom even played some flute and piano here once in a while, and I know she loved that. So, and I'm just continuing glad that they enjoyed their life here. Throughout this process since January when my dad passed, I've run into, met, and also seen lots of their neighbors, like June, Ed, Sherry, Jim. I just every story they tell me is just basically highlighting all the wonderful things they did for them, inviting them over, being warm, cooking something on the green egg. Nobody's ever had a bad word about them. My heart is so full that, they had that. They were so embraced by this community, and, they just fit right in. It was perfect. Even there's a server at Carrabba's, because my dad every Sunday night, I believe, and sat at the bar and just hung out. I enjoyed that. So if I go over to Carrabba's, I can talk to the person who my dad probably has some stories to tell me. So. I always thought, my dad only had seemingly minor health issues throughout his life, like arthritis. he did have a shoulder replacement, and maybe you knew a lot of skin cancer. So, but he always seemed resilient and self-sufficient to me. Like, he always took care of his business and didn't really complain much. So I kind of saw that as a pretty honorable quality. And he was very active. Did a lot of construction for a lot of his friends, helping them out. He liked to kayak. He loved riding motorcycles, which was great because as a kid he got me into riding motorcycles too. So it's a great skill to have, I think, too. And also, like Father Justin said, shooting and hunting. And he also took up boxing for a little while too.
I'd like to see that.
I don't know if his coach is here, but he was a man of like so many different talents and activities. So I thought that was. I'm just glad he got to do so many different things. And unfortunately, right before he passed, I was planning to be up here for a week because he was going to have his shoulder surgery revived and done again. But and he was also planning a trip in his RV down to the Keys right before I came. So as you can see, he's like a nonstop kind of person that never sits still. So, but sadly, those trips never came to pass, and he caught the flu and wasn't able to take those. But I am glad he didn't suffer very long. I'm kind of grateful both my parents didn't suffer long. They just enjoyed life too much to be in a position not to be able to enjoy life. Yes. Being the son of a psychologist and a social worker, you kind of always feel like you're analyzed, but I took that fine because in exchange for being analyzed, they were so extremely loving and made sure I had the most comfortable life growing up. Always felt safe, and my dad was always there for me. One story I'll point out is like he liked to do little talks, so he had to pre-plan like a conversation with me, like advice or something he wanted to tell me I should do. So like, do you have time to talk before you head out back to school at UC? So, and basically, even our last conversation on the phone was, we were going to set up a time to talk later. Just sadly, that time to have that talk didn't occur. So. But I always kind of went in with a little concern, like, what is he going to tell me? But you're doing great, Dave. We're proud of you. It was always a little meeting. You always set me up for a little worry, I guess. They were also, you would think they would be like helicopter parents and always making sure I was okay because it's only child or whatever, but they were actually the opposite. They rarely questioned where I was. They kind of trusted me to do my own thing. I was never the kid with a curfew. And, I'll probably be hosted parties while they're out of town. But did want to point out, learning more about my dad's life in college from, his Celtic Chi fraternity brothers, that party seemed to be a common theme. So, maybe, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But you can talk to, fraternity brothers about that. I don't know the story about it. But kind of overall saying, thanks for raising me right, to be open-minded, yet critical thinker, giving me the right tools to be successful, and never being overbearing. Going on, like my dad's probably greatest virtue, and sometimes his fault is that he didn't want to burden anybody with his problems or concerns or complaints. Even when he was sick, I was rarely the first to know. He usually found out secondhand. So, I know he's trying to protect me and not have me worry too much. I do respect that. As a psychologist, he kind of took through his, in a career like clinical psychologist, you kind of listen to people's problems all day long and probably try to avoid internalizing them, but naturally you do. So I think it's kind of his way of not doing the same, giving it back out to others. So he was kind of like, tell me, it's better not to know about the sadness and evil, hate in the world if you can avoid it, because you won't be bogged down by it. So that's kind of one of the things that I took from him. But he was always someone who liked to help others. So I think that's a common theme for you, Father Justin. we didn't. My dad and I shared some common interests, but I think one of the greatest ones was music. Same with my mom. For every birthday, he would send a vinyl record that he liked and thought I might enjoy. I kind of remember some of the like Just Tall, Tom Petty, Rolling Stones, and one of the really strong memory as a kid is we'd ride around in the car and take me to I took drum lessons. You always played Led Zeppelin 2 on a cassette. And I just love that album. It's probably like the #1 album that I'm connected to my dad. And as you can see, Jimmy Buffett was a huge part of his life. Most people said he kind of looked like Jimmy Buffett in a way. The way he dressed, maybe his hair, things like that. So I was lucky, to join him for a couple concerts to see Jimmy Buffett before Jimmy passed himself. So I hope, we're spreading some beautiful Jimmy vibes as we occupy the space. And although Route A1A doesn't wind its way through the Panhandle, my dad made sure we believe it did. Also, my dad was a huge lover of animals. We've had several dogs, even cats and chickens when I was a kid. We raised chickens for eggs. It was nice to have the brown eggs. He had birds and fish. But most recently, as you know, Mia, she was a beautiful girl. When she walked up to me, I felt like my dad's spirit was in her in a certain way. We thought it might be a little too much for him, but as you know, you can't really convince him if his mind is in a certain way to do anything else. So, but I'm grateful that he had me in his life, especially taking a trip out west in his RV, and just really the dog was lucky to have me and my dad, and my dad was lucky to have me as a companion there after my mom passed. Similar to my mom's ceremony, I wanted to leave you all with a poem called The Dash. It's one of my favorites because it reminds us to keep living and enjoying life as much as we can in the time we still have. So I'll read that. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For the dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you want to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel. And be less quick to anger and show appreciation more and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remember this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's action to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? I am and will forever be comforted to know my dad did truly live his dash. Well, he's in a better place now with my mom. I know he got the most, he squeezed the most out of 77 years of life to your honor. And having, a loving group of friends and family that love to experience travel all over the world. He's kind of lucky now because there's no limits to where his heavenly RV can be taken. If I can leave you with anything, I would encourage you to live a little more like my dad. Change your latitude and your attitude. Take a migration towards what moves you. Go ahead and care less what people think about you. Travel alone to faraway places. Go out of your way to help other people as travel ahead. Because, as you say, we don't know what will come one day. I'm going to really miss you, Dad. I know your spirit, the best qualities stay with me forever as a guide to make sure my own dash is lived without fear. Thank you for everything. I loved you. And may you be blessed. God's love evermore. Thank you for listening
Oh,
today.
nice.